What's going on to whoever may be watching this, and welcome back to another Casual Hoops video. This is what we've been doing. This is what we are going to keep doing, is I'm going to get a few talking points, talk about them for 15-20 minutes, no cuts, almost in like a podcast format except they're not live, and there's going to be no edits like I said, and we're just going to keep this up. So last week we had a few talking points, Donovan Mitchell, the Knicks, Chet Holmgren. And today, we're going to bring back one of those to start out with. It's going to be Donovan Mitchell. That's what we're going to start with. And we're going to roll into some regular season record predictions. The best teams, who I think the top 5 teams are going to be. And if we have time, I'm going to give you my opinion on this Lakers Big 3 conversation that went down the other day. LeBron, AD, Russ on the phone chit-chatting. We don't know what they're talking about. But I'm going to give you a idea of what I think went on if we have time. So without further ado, let's stop with the bullshit and let's get into the video. First thing we're going to be talking about, we're going to pick up Donovan Mitchell. So, Donovan Mitchell, excuse me real quick, Danny Ainge, I had no idea, was the GM of the Utah Jazz, right? And so far, the only 2 teams that we've heard in the Donovan Mitchell mix was the Heat and the Knicks for the most part. And the Heat, they were in and out. They're more focused on Kevin Durant. So we're not going to count them out, but that's not where we're focusing. What I'm going to be talking about is during this past week, the Utah Jazz offered the Knicks Donovan Mitchell and Bogdanovich for Obi Toppin, Emmanuel Quickley, Quentin Grimes, Deuce McBride, and 6 first-round picks, right? And being a Knicks fan, you read this and you're like, hell fucking no. Well, at least I know I was like, hell fucking no. Like, knowing this team, we know what they've done in the past. They pull trigger on some things like that Melo trade back in the day, and it just blows up your whole entire future. Luckily for us, that didn't happen. The Knicks denied, but apparently they're still in talks. People are still saying that it's inevitable that Donovan Mitchell will be a Knick. And honestly, like, looking at these things, you know, the connections that he has to New York, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up in a Knicks jersey. I just don't want to give up the world for him. And I think that's the direction that if you are acquiring Donovan Mitchell, you're going to give up the world. I said this last week, I like where they're at, right? You're building something. You have a lot of picks. You have a lot of young talent. Just keep it going. I'd rather have 10 consistently good years out of the Knicks instead of 3 really good years. And that's just my opinion. So the new news that came out, I think it was either yesterday or today, I woke up and I read that Danny Ainge wants 7 first-round picks for Donovan Mitchell. So the trade that, if we go back to this Knicks trade, he wanted 6 first-round picks and 4 players. So now he wants 7 first-round picks, and I'm sure there will have to be some type of player compensation, some young talent, some vets, maybe some money thrown here or there. And I just don't think that Donovan Mitchell is worth 7 first-round picks. That is just unbelievable. And even if you think he is worth 7 first-round picks, what team has that draft capital is going to want to do that? The only team that I can think of is OKC because they own every single draft pick until 2,300. That's the only team that I can really think of that could possibly make this trade without giving up their entire future. So, I don't really know where they're going to go with this, and I still haven't really thought of a team besides the Heat, the Knicks, maybe the Raptors, that could get Donovan Mitchell, it would make their team better. I know he's a great player, but there's just some teams that it's just not going to happen. He won't end up in Sacramento. They could have all the picks in the world. It's just not going to happen. But I just don't know a team that will give up 7 first-round picks. To me, it seems more every single day that Donovan Mitchell at the start of the season will be in a Utah Jazz uniform, similar to KD and Kyrie. They're not going anywhere. You could hear the reports. They're not going anywhere. If you're asking for 7 first-round picks for Donovan Mitchell, I don't think there's any team that is that greedy, or not greedy. There's no team that needs him right now that I can think of. Besides the Heat, like I've said 12 times. I think the Heat could really use him, but like I said, they're focused on KD. I just don't see it happening. So that's my opinion on the whole Donovan Mitchell thing. I'm sure by next week there'll be a little more news that I could talk about. But we're going to keep the Donovan Mitchell saga going throughout the months, throughout the offseason. We're going to see where he goes. But the next thing I want to talk about is who I believe is going to be the top 5 regular season teams, the top 5 regular season teams in the NBA next year. It doesn't matter if they're East or West. I'm just going to give you my opinion on who's going to have like the best record, second best record, third, you know what I'm saying. And I just want to make sure that we know that regular season team, your regular season record isn't who you actually are. You know? We saw the Utah Jazz 2 years ago, or maybe, they were like the number 1 seed. They aren't the best team in the league. Just because you have the best record doesn't mean that you're the best team in the league. But there are great regular season teams. So, because I know once we get to 1, it's going to be a interesting take. I understand that, but that's okay. So let's start it out here. Number 5, the 5th best regular season team. Actually, before I start this, let me give you one more thing. The West had 4 of the 5 best seeds in the league last year. So 4 of the top teams, record-wise, were out of the West. So that kind of had me leaning here a little bit. But there was some Eastern Conference teams that were hurt, but it doesn't matter. Number 5, the Clippers. Clippers are back. Last year they had a 42-40 record. Paul George was out for most of the year. They didn't have Kawhi at all. This team still plays above 500, and I mean, think about it. You're missing Kawhi Leonard, you're missing Paul George for your whole entire year. 2 years ago, you were a couple games away from making the finals until Kawhi gets hurt. They were I shouldn't say definitely. I hate when people say definitely this, and that. But they were going to make the finals. They were going to give the Bucks a problem. Okay, so that's my take on the Clippers. Number 4, the Nets. Nets last season had a 44-38 record. They didn't have Kyrie at all. KD was hurt a little bit. They were the best team in the league at the start of the season for the most part. They were like a top 3 team. I think them and the Warriors were crazy in the beginning of the year. And they still were missing Kyrie Irving because of the whole vaccine thing. So I think next year for the Nets, KD, Kyrie, Ben Simmons. Your biggest issue last season, besides the whole Kyrie thing, but if you're looking at the team on paper, the biggest issue was defense. They don't have much defense. So now you got fucking Ben Simmons, who's pretty much everything besides shooting. Rebounding, playmaking, defense, athleticism, length, everything besides shooting. And that's okay when you have Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. So I don't want people to forget how good Ben Simmons is. He really is good. He gets a lot of hate. I definitely hate on him because he can't hit a jump shot. And when you're in the NBA and you can't hit a jump shot, it's a bad look. But this team is going to be the 4th best team in the league in the upcoming season. Number 3, the number 1 team last year, the Phoenix Suns, who had a 64-18 record. They had a historic year. This will not happen again. They're going to lose a few more games. They might drop down to like the mid-50s, 55, 56, 57, those kinds of wins. I think they're going to be more careful with D-Book this year. Not saying that they were dangerous with him, but I think they saw that when the playoffs came, he was hurt a little bit against the Pelicans. The Pelicans got 2 games on them. They made it a little bit of a sweat when it really didn't need to be. So I think D-Book's going to get a few more resting games. I think they're going to play more long-term next year. They got Ayton back. They got their whole entire team. They're still the same exact team. This team is still a finals contender, but regular season-wise, record-wise, I think they're going to drop back a little bit. 3rd best team in the league record-wise, still a great spot. Number 2, I got the Boston Celtics, and this is pretty simple. I'm not going to talk about this one for too much. 51-31 record last season. They were off to a horrific start in the first half, and then they picked it up and were able to grind out to the second seed, where they versed the Nets in the first round and won. They got the best lineup in the NBA. They picked up Brogdon. That was the one thing they're missing. They had defense. They had scoring. They had all this stuff. Now they gained more experience. They were missing a playmaker. They got Brogdon. Watch out, Brogdon, 6th man of the year. I'm sure he won't start. I don't know what they're going to do, but if he is 6th man, watch out for him for 6th man of the year. Number 1. This is where I couldn't wait to get, because this is interesting. People aren't going to like this. But I think, on paper, how could you not pick this team? I think the best regular season team in the league in the upcoming season is going to be the Minnesota Timberwolves. The fucking Timberwolves. I hate on Rudy Gobert just as much as you probably do. I hate on Rudy Gobert just as much as you do. I can't believe they traded Pat Bev. I can't believe they traded Malik Beasley. But look at that starting lineup. Look at the starting lineup. D'Lo, Anthony Edwards. I don't know who the 3 is going to be. Maybe Jaden McDaniels. And then Cat and Gobert. Cat and Gobert, do you know what that reminds me of? Dirk and Tyson Chandler. An absolute scorer at the 4. A big man scorer that can get a bucket anywhere. And then you just have a defensive-minded center. Chandler, Gobert. This is going to work. You know what other team did this to? The Lakers when they won 2 years ago. So if you're saying Tyson Chandler and Dirk, that was basketball like 10 years ago. The game's changed. What happened 2 years ago? AD at the 4, McGee and Dwight at the 5. It works. Because this guy Cat's not going to be banging down low. He's going to have a lot more energy. He's not going to have to do a whole lot of defensive work. He's not the slowest dude, big man wise. So I think he'll be able to do a little something on the perimeter. But at the end of the day, when you're shuffling dudes down to one of the best shot blockers in the NBA, it's not going to be a problem. This team has a lot of potential. Like I said, I don't believe that they're going to be a title contender. They might prove me wrong. They might make a Western Conference semi. If they make the Western Conference, there's no way they win it. But this team, that starting 5 is scary. Anthony Edwards is in his 3rd or 4th year. I think it's the 3rd year. Watch out for him. He was a dog in the playoffs last year. We already know Anthony Edwards is one of the best rising stars in the league. D'Lo had a great season. He's a playmaker. 18 a game. He stepped up his defensive game last year a lot more than I thought he would. And if it's Jaden McDaniels at the 3, we know what he does. He's 3-and-D. And you got Cat. He's an all-star, one of the best shooting bigs ever. I know you might not agree, but it's pretty obvious he's top 5 shooting bigs ever. And then you got the fucking 37-time defensive player of the year, the French fucking weirdo. That's a squad, bro. That's a squad. I think they're going to be fighting for a number 1 seed. A team like the Clippers isn't going to be fighting for a 1 seed. They're playing the long game. I think this team thinks they have something to prove. So when they see a team like the Grizzlies last year, who they lost to, seeing what they did, they came in 2nd place. I think they got a little chip on their shoulder. They want to make a run. So I think they're going to be competing for the number 1 seed. I think some of these teams, like the Suns, Clippers, Nets, they're not going to be fighting for the number 1 seed. They're going to play their best basketball every single night, but it's not going to be we want that 1 seed. And I think that's what the T-Wolves are going to do. Now, I have a few more minutes here. I probably have a minute or 2 left here before I have to close this out. So I'm going to talk about the Lakers' Big 3 conversation. What did AD, LeBron, and Russ talk about on the phone? I think they got the new coach. They really haven't made many moves in the offseason. They lost Malik Monk, who is probably one of their better players. I think that conversation was to get all of them level. all ego to the side. I think they have to. They're going to. I think they were talking about moving their personal agendas out of the way, and I think it was more of like, let's compete. We saw what happened last year. We saw what the media did to us. We saw all the Russell Westbrook hate. LeBron's on the way down. AD's glass. And it's all individual things. So I think it's them coming together, understanding that all three of them need to be on the same page for them to make a run. Because all three of these guys, the Lakers team, it's championship or bust. So on that phone call was strictly about team. Let's make this a team. Let's use what people were saying about us last year. Let's use that to our advantage. Let's give us a fire inside of us. Let's go for it. They're going to move away their personal agendas, and they're going to go for a championship. I think that if they block out the noise, the Lakers could be in a title contention. The only issue is the depth. Besides Westbrook, LeBron, AD, there isn't a whole lot there. And I believe that's pretty much it for here. You know, I gave you my 3 points, Donovan Mitchell, top 5 teams in the league, and my Lakers big 3, like what did they talk about. So, thank you for watching. All the links are down below. I'm going to be doing this every single Wednesday. I keep saying that. This is going to be up within the next 1 or 2 days. So make sure you hit the sub button, hit the like button, check out the TikTok, check out the merch. I got to work on it a little bit more, but that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed, and as always, stay casual.